Greetings everyone, Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of What's Hot with Sea of Tranquility. Today we got a little book review for you. So this book came in from our folks at Omnibus Press. The book is by Mike Barnes. It's called A New Day Yesterday, UK Progressive Rock in the 1970s. Okay. Big book. About just under 600 pages. Basically, if you love prog rock from the UK in the 70s, this is probably a must-read for you. All right, all of the great bands are covered. Generally, each band is given a separate chapter. It's very well put together with a lot of really interesting anecdotes, interview snippets. Okay, some color pictures, photographs, I should say, around and black and white photos throughout the book, just to give you an idea. Some of the chapters and bands that are covered here. So a lot of the early underground psychedelic scene is covered here, specifically talking about obviously Pink Floyd, okay, and very early King Crimson. Go into the whole. In fact, Crimson gets a lot of coverage in this book, so they talk a lot about the first album, The Court of the Crimson King, obviously, the big show they played at Hyde Park opening up for the Rolling Stones. We also, like I said, go a lot into Pink Floyd. There's a whole chapter on Genesis, okay, the formation of Genesis. And again, remember these chapters and throughout this book, most of it centers on the early part of the decade. Then towards the back end of the book, they kind of go and revisit some of these bands on what they did as they closed the decade out. Who else we got? Jethro Tull, of course. Yes, of course. All right. Van de Graaff Generator. Got a nice chapter on Van de Graaff in here. You got a nice chapter on Mike Oldfield and the Tubular Bells era, as well as some of the other artists on the Virgin Records label. You got some information on the rock and opposition, so like Henry Cow. All right. You got a chapter on the Moody Blues. All right, you've got the Poor Man's Moody Blues, Barclay James Harvest. Okay, they also touch on Renaissance as well. Okay, you got some other chapters that focus not so much on the bands or the music, but kind of stuff that was going around in the scene of the time. So there's a chapter on the kind of the whole drug culture of that era, what have you. You got a chapter on Arthur Brown, okay, and his band Kingdom Come. You've got a whole chapter on the birth of the Canterbury scene and a lot of the acts that kind of came up around that time. So, of course, you got Caravan and Soft Machine and Camel, okay, National Health, and Hatfield in the North, all that kind of stuff. Egg, all right, is covered here as well. Kevin Ayers and Robert Wyatt, that whole scene, Gone. What else? The band Gracious, kind of a cool band, fairly unknown to most people, covered here as well. A chapter on journalism in the 70s and how it kind of covered the prog movement. All right. What else? Bands like Colosseum. All right. Greenslade, Centipede, Pete Brown, Gentle Giant. Got a whole chapter on Gentle Giant. You got Procol Harum and Traffic and Family, also covered as well. What else here? Curved Air, all right, with a nice interview with Sonia Christina as well, which is pretty interesting. You got a chapter on kind of like space rock and kind of like the hippie movement. So, of course, Hawkwind, Quintessence, 30-year bands, that sort of thing. Politics. How politics of the mid-late 70s was affecting what you saw in lyrical content in prog rock and what have you. Steve Hillage, like I said, also mentioned Gone before. They talk about Steve's solo career. Then they also get into like Roxy Music and Brian Eno. All right, Quiet Sun and 801. All right, so that kind of more like the art rock period. Okay, they talk a lot about the festivals. Rock festivals, and more specifically festivals where you had lots of prog acts showing up at. All right, they touch on punk in a little bit in the UK and how that kind of came to be and how that affected prog rock. And then the end of the decade, and that I think for me was also a pretty interesting chapter as it kind of, again, circled back with a lot of these bands that were fairly prolific early on in the decade, but then kind of what they were doing as the 70s was winding down. Musical tastes were changing. You had the rise of punk and disco and what have you, and how that was affecting a lot of the bands who were, you know, bigger early in the decade. So a pretty well put together book. Like I said, it's pretty hefty, but you know, you got a lot of cool information, and I think if you're a fan of the genre, you will really dig this, and you'll probably, you know, read some cool information that maybe you hadn't heard before. All right, and like I said, there's trying to get to there's photographs in a couple sections through the book, some of which I had never seen before, you know, which is always nice. So otherwise, from Mike Barnes, a job well done. So you can actually get this book. It's U.S. $28.99, Canadian $38.99, UK 20 pounds, I guess. So check it out. If you're a prog fan, I know there's been a lot of progressive rock kind of history of books that have come out over the years, but this one's a little bit different. As it's really just focusing on that one decade and specifically the UK band. So if you're a fan of the US acts like, you know, Happy the Man and Kansas and all that kind of stuff, they're not covered here. Basically just all the stuff that came out of the UK. So pretty cool. So check it out. This is on the web at www.catranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. Of course, we're here on YouTube all the damn time. So we'll see you guys real soon. Coming up shortly, getting together with Steve Keeler via Zoom, and we're going to deliver to you our ranking the albums of Metallica, okay, as well as top 10 songs. Very difficult one for Opeth. Very hard to do. A great band. So Steve's joining me for both of those. So we'll see you guys real soon. Take care. Bye-bye.